On the day of our divorce, my husband tossed a bank card at me like a handout for the destitute. Burning with shame, I shoved it onto a shelf and didn't touch it for 5 years. When I finally decided to close the account, the bank teller said something that nearly made me collapse. But before we continue, please tell me where you're from and your age. Enjoy the story. Vera dreaded recalling that particular day, not because of the pain that fades with time. It was the shame, not shame for herself, but for how easily the man with whom she had shared nearly half of her adult life could transform their shared conclusion into an act of humiliation. The divorce was finalized swiftly, devoid of courtroom outbursts or public tears. Vera insisted on it. No squabbling over assets, no emotional breakdowns, no war over furniture or cookware. Her sole desire was for it all to be over. Alexei arrived for the proceedings composed, impeccably clean-shaven, exuding the calm of someone utterly confident in their superiority. He never once met Vera's gaze, as if she were a fleeting, incidental presence. When the judge announced the verdict, Alexei was the first to exit the courtroom. Vera fastened her coat, struggling to breathe evenly so her hands wouldn't tremble. Outside, the air was damp and gray, smelling of spring mingled with dirty snow. "Vera," Alexei called as they reached the steps. She paused, not turning around. "Here," he said. Vera turned to see him holding a bank card in his palm, a plain plastic one with no distinguishing marks. Alexei held it as one might an unnecessary item, between 2 fingers. "What's this?" Vera asked. "Support," he sneered, "so you don't come running and whining later. It's enough." He flicked the card into her hand like a coin tossed to a street performer. Vera barely had time to react. The plastic stung her fingers. "I don't need anything from you," she said quietly. "Of course." Alexei feigned a sigh. "Proud. Always were. But take it just in case. Life is long. You might need it." And he walked away without a backward glance. Vera watched him go for only a few seconds, just long enough to grasp the reality. This was it. Without tears or shouting, they had truly parted ways. She clenched the card in her fist. She wanted to fling it into a puddle at the feet of passers-by to be trampled, but Vera didn't. She reached home, placed the card in a dresser drawer amongst old documents and forgotten trinkets, and slammed it shut with such force that something inside clinked. It felt as though his smirk was imprinted on the card, and Vera never touched it again. Life after the divorce wasn't a fairy tale, but it wasn't a catastrophe either. Vera worked as an accountant at a small company where the manager valued order, and her colleagues appreciated her composure and accuracy. She rented a modest apartment near the metro, visited her mother on weekends, set the table for holidays as she always had, and tried not to speak of Alexei. Occasionally, acquaintances would cautiously inquire, "How are you?" And Vera would reply, "Fine." And it was true. She didn't crave pity. She desired a quiet, stable existence. The card was rarely recalled. Sometimes, when Vera sorted through papers and came across that particular drawer, she'd feel a brief pang, not of pain, but of irritation, like a splinter lodged beneath the skin. But she would quickly close the drawer and think, "Don't touch it. Let the past lie there." 5 years passed, then a little more. The world changed, prices rose, and habits shifted. Vera learned to live without depending on anyone, and she even came to relish that feeling, as if she held her life in her own hands and wouldn't relinquish it. One autumn day, when the morning began with fog and darkness descended by 5 o'clock in the evening, Vera decided to organize some documents. Her mother had asked for help with inheritance paperwork, needing to verify cadastral data, gather certificates, and prepare everything meticulously for the notary. Vera laid out the folders on the table and habitually switched on her desk lamp. While sorting, she opened that very drawer. Not because she was looking for the card, but because it contained old passport copies and certificates, all mixed together. And in the far corner, nestled in a small plastic bag, she saw the card. The plastic had dulled. Its expiration date had long passed, but the number and name were still legible. Vera picked up the card with 2 fingers, just as Alexei had held it years ago. She thought, "My God, what was that all about?" And suddenly, she realized she wanted to finally tie up this loose end, to stop holding on to anything connected to Alexei, to discard his gift from her home, and to close that door to the past. She decided to simply go to the bank and close the account, if it still existed. If the account was gone, she would obtain a closure confirmation to officially close the chapter, as a good accountant would prefer. The next day, Vera took a half-day off. The bank branch was located downtown in a large glass building. Vera approached a terminal, took a number, and sat down to wait. The hall smelled of coffee from the machine and something new, plasticky. People spoke in hushed tones, some arguing on the phone, others browsing the news. Her number lit up on the display. "Window 3, announced a synthesized female voice. Vera approached the counter. Behind the glass sat a young woman in a bank uniform, neat, with her hair pulled back. Her badge read, Ekaterina Sergeyevna. "Good afternoon," she smiled. "How can I help you?" "I want to close an account," Vera said calmly. "It's an old card. I don't use it." She handed over the plastic. Ekaterina took the card, looked at it, typed something into the computer, and requested Vera's passport. Vera gave her passport and sat down opposite. Ekaterina worked quickly and confidently, clicking the mouse, scrolling through data on the screen. Then her gaze suddenly lingered, as if she reread a line twice. Her smile vanished. Ekaterina straightened in her chair, looked back at the monitor, then at Vera. A cautious expression appeared in her eyes, like a doctor who knows, "Now I have to deliver some unpleasant news." "Could you please tell me," she said very evenly, "do you truly wish to close this account?" "Yes," Vera replied. "That's why I came." Ekaterina exhaled slowly. "You see," she paused, as if searching for words, "there's a slight complication. We can't simply close it right now." "Why not?" Vera frowned. "I'm the owner. The card is in my name." Ekaterina nodded, her voice growing even softer. "You are indeed the account holder, but there has been activity on this account, and very substantial sums, so the bank must follow procedure. I cannot simply close it upon your request." Vera felt a chill creep through her. "What activity?" she asked, her voice strained. "I haven't touched this card for 5 years. I had no idea there was anything on it." Ekaterina glanced back at the screen and carefully angled the monitor so Vera could see. "Here," she said, "the last transaction." Vera saw lines of deposits and transfers and amounts. The sums were so staggering that her vision momentarily blurred. Not enough for groceries, let alone repairs. There were hundreds of thousands, then millions, regularly with varying frequency, but consistently. "That's a mistake," Vera stammered. "That's impossible." Ekaterina shook her head. "There can be no mistake here. The transactions are confirmed. The account has seen deposits and withdrawals, often cash withdrawals." Vera stared at the numbers, unable to connect them to reality. It was as if she were reading someone else's story. Who? Her voice trembled. Who was withdrawing the money? Ekaterina pressed a few keys. "The withdrawals were made with the card," she said, "and by authorized power of attorney. There is another user on this account." "Another user?" Vera's eyes snapped up. Ekaterina replied cautiously, as if afraid to disturb the air. "Your ex-husband, Alexei Nikolaevich. He is listed as an individual with transaction access." Vera clenched her fists. "But we're divorced," she breathed, "and the card was in my drawer." Ekaterina nodded, a hint of sympathy in the gesture. "Sometimes, due to a supplementary agreement," she began, then stopped. "I'm sorry, I cannot discuss details until we complete an internal investigation, but I must tell you the most important thing. The bank has identified unusual activity and is obligated to request supporting documentation. We cannot close the account until the source of the funds and the legality of the transactions are determined." Vera sat frozen. Her first thought was, "This is a trap." Her second, "They're going to blame me." "So," she said quietly, "you're saying millions passed through my name and I didn't know about it?" "Precisely," Ekaterina replied. She leaned in slightly and said almost a whisper, low enough that the adjacent cubicles wouldn't overhear. "Vera Nikolaevna, you need to see this. I understand how it sounds, but if you were unaware, you must act properly and quickly." "Act quickly in what way?" Vera felt her mouth go dry. Ekaterina hesitated for a moment, then said, "I'm not allowed to frighten you, but I see that this morning there was an attempted large transfer, and it was stopped by the system because you personally came to the branch, and now the account is under special surveillance. This has already been recorded. An internal investigation by the bank's security service will commence. There may be inquiries from the authorities, and you should prepare yourself." "Prepare for what?" Vera barely recognized her own voice. Ekaterina looked her directly in the eyes. "For the possibility that you may be summoned for an explanation, and you will need to prove that you were not managing this money." She then took a pen, quickly scribbled something on a piece of paper, and discreetly slid it towards Vera. "Here is the bank's security service hotline number and a list of documents you should gather." She paused. "And please do not call your ex-husband right now. Do not alert him." A shiver traced Vera's spine. She picked up the paper, saw the neat list: account statement, divorce certificate, proof of residence, income statement, statement of disagreement with transactions. It all looked alarmingly official. "Why? Why are you helping me?" Vera asked, looking at Ekaterina. She lowered her eyes. "Because I've seen this happen before, when someone did nothing wrong but ends up taking the blame, and because you're sitting here like someone whose world has just fallen out from under them. I can't break protocol, but I can advise you. Proceed calmly and document everything." Vera nodded. She felt almost numb, a strange detachment. "What do I do now?" she asked. Ekaterina replied in a businesslike manner. "I am processing the request for the statement and documenting your inquiry. You will sign a declaration stating that the transactions are unknown to you. Then the account will be temporarily restricted pending investigation." She paused. "You need a lawyer, and preferably today." Vera walked out of the bank into the dim autumn twilight and stopped at the door, as if unable to take a step. Cars drove by, people hurried along, a street musician played a saxophone, and the world looked the same as it had an hour ago. But for Vera, everything had changed. She didn't head for the metro. She walked, needing time to collect herself. Questions swirled in her head. How? Why? She remembered the day of the divorce, Alexei tossing the card saying, "It's enough." Back then, Vera assumed he'd put in some trivial amount so he could later boast, "I helped," and appear magnanimous. But what the bank had shown her wasn't a handout. It was something else entirely, vast, corrupt, and dangerous. Vera stopped by a small park and sat on a bench. She took out her phone, opened her contacts. Whom to call? Her mother. Her mother would weep and say, "I told you so, that man." A friend. A friend would advise talking it over amicably, but Vera already understood. There will be no amicable here. She called the only person who could speak calmly and practically, her work acquaintance, a lawyer named Andrei Ivanovich. He had once assisted her company in a tax dispute, and Vera remembered his approach. He didn't frighten, he didn't promise miracles, but he laid everything out clearly. "Andrei Ivanovich, hello. This is Vera Nikolaevna, the accountant from Rhythm Logistics. I need a consultation. Urgently." "Hello, Vera Nikolaevna. What has happened?" She explained briefly, without emotion, what she had learned. Andrei Ivanovich remained silent, not interrupting. Only at the end did he say, "Where are you now?" "Outside. Just came from the bank." "Good. First, do not call your ex-husband. Second, do not sign anything except the statement that the transactions are unknown to you. Third, gather your documents and come to my office. I will free up an hour. This could be criminal." Vera uttered the words so softly it seemed to taint the air. Andrei Ivanovich replied calmly, "It might be. But for now, you have a chance to establish your position correctly. You must not panic. You must document the facts, and your task is to show that you were not managing the account." "But how could he have used it? The card is with me." "Not necessarily with the card," Andrei Ivanovich said. "Sometimes there's a duplicate issue, sometimes access via mobile banking, sometimes a power of attorney or authorization as a representative. We need to see the documents and the statement." "Understood." Vera stood up from the bench. Her legs felt like jelly, but her thoughts were becoming clearer. She needed to stay strong, calm, like at work. Facts, paperwork, procedure. In the lawyer's office, Vera sat opposite Andrei Ivanovich, placing documents on the table one by one. The divorce certificate, passport, income statement, a printout of her correspondence with Alexei. There wasn't much, but some of it had been preserved. "So," Andrei Ivanovich said, carefully examining the statement Vera had managed to obtain from the bank, "look here. The deposits come from various sources, some from companies, some from individuals. The withdrawals are mainly cash, taken from ATMs in different locations, including places not near your home. That's important." "Why is it important?" "Because it shows you weren't the one withdrawing the money. ATM cameras might also confirm this, but that's upon request. Second, see this attempted transfer this morning? That means someone was actively using the account until the very last moment." Vera clenched her fingers. "He was doing all this in my name the whole time." "It appears so," Andrei Ivanovich said. "The question is, why?" Vera paused for the first time. Why would Alexei need her specifically? He could have opened an account in his own name. "Perhaps," the lawyer said slowly, "he didn't want to be traced, or he had restrictions, or he realized it was easier with your name. You're a quiet accountant, no debts, no bad credit history, no unnecessary attention, and most importantly, you didn't touch the card." The words sounded harsh, but logical. "What should I do?" Vera asked. "We will draft a statement to the bank regarding unauthorized operations and request documentation for third-party access to the account. Simultaneously, a police report for potential fraud using your details, not because you want to send him to jail, but because you are documenting. You are the victim. That's important. And if he claims I knew, that's why we need proof. Firstly, your financial life over these years, your income, expenses, lack of major purchases. Secondly, lack of access. You didn't use the account, you didn't transfer, you didn't withdraw. Thirdly, witnesses, your mother, colleagues, possibly bank employees." Andrei Ivanovich raised a finger. "No initiative. Don't stage confrontations. Don't threaten him. Don't text him. I know everything. Because then he'll start covering his tracks." Vera nodded. Her inherent pride, which had previously prevented her from complaining, now became an ally. She didn't want to speak with Alexei anyway. She wanted to eradicate everything connected to that man from her life, once and for all. "Can we get it blocked?" she asked. "Yes, the bank already seems to have partially restricted it, but it needs to be legally cemented." Vera left the lawyer's office late that evening. The fatigue was immense, as if she hadn't slept for 24 hours. But inside, a subtle, almost imperceptible core of strength had formed. She had a plan. Alexei called himself. The next day, closer to noon. Vera saw his name on her phone screen and froze. Her heart pounded harder. She almost didn't answer, but the lawyer had said, "Listen, don't provoke him, just record." Vera turned on the call recorder and answered, "Hello, where are you?" Alexei's voice was irritated, but with a strained calmness. "I need to clarify something." "About what?" Vera tried to speak evenly. A pause. Alexei was clearly choosing his words carefully. "Did you happen to go to the bank?" he asked. Vera felt a chill run down her spine. Why do you ask? She inquired. Alexei chuckled, but it sounded unsure. You see, there were some technicalities. I opened a card for you a while back, remember? Some notifications might have come through. Did you receive anything? Vera remained silent. She suddenly saw it clearly. He's scared, not angry about insolence. He's afraid she saw. Alexei's voice grew harsher. Are you listening? Were you at the bank? No, Vera said calmly. Why? Alexei exhaled as if a weight had been lifted from his chest. Nothing. Forget it. Just, if anything comes up, don't mess with it. It's all old stuff. Don't touch it. Understood? Vera held the phone and looked out the window. Why? Vera asked. Because, Alexei raised his voice, because it's necessary. You always complicate things. Just leave it alone. He hung up. Vera sat motionless for another minute, then pressed save recording and, for the first time in a long time, felt not humiliation, but anger. Not a hysterical, destructive anger, but the cold fury of someone who had been treated like a doormat. Well, no, Vera said quietly to herself. That won't happen again. Everything else proceeded like a long, tedious, but very important procedure, the kind Vera understood better than most. Papers, signatures, applications, copies, dates, notifications. She went to the bank with her lawyer. Ekaterina Sergeevna, seeing Vera again, visibly exhaled with relief. Now Vera wasn't alone, and that felt right. The bank's security service summoned Vera for a conversation, not an interrogation, a discussion. Two men in sharp suits asked questions calmly but incisively. When was the last time you used the card? Did you know about the account? Did you give your ex-husband access? Why didn't you close it after the divorce? Vera answered truthfully. The card was a humiliation. She didn't want to touch it. She lived on her salary. There were no major purchases. Her lawyer added dryly phrased explanations. Then Vera was called to the police station to provide a statement. It was more unpleasant there. A small office, the smell of paper and cheap coffee. The investigator, a man in his 40s, looked tired, not aggressive. He looked at Vera as if he had seen dozens of such stories, some naive, some cunning, some truly unaware. Vera Nikolaevna, the investigator said, gesturing to a stack of papers, you understand that large sums pass through the account, and formally, the account is yours. I understand, Vera replied. That's why I came myself. I don't want to be held responsible for something I didn't do. The investigator looked up. A glimmer of respect appeared in his eyes. Good, he said. The main thing now is to establish who actually used it and where the money came from. Vera left the station with the feeling that she was wading through mud, but moving in the right direction. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't making excuses. She was gathering facts. A few days later, Ekaterina Sergeevna called her. Vera Nikolaevna, good evening. I cannot discuss details over the phone, but I want to warn you your ex-husband came to the branch today, attempting to obtain information. He was refused. He was very displeased. Thank you, Vera said quietly and did not call Alexei again. Alexei began to apply pressure. First, he sent a message. What are you doing? What do you want with this? Do you want trouble? Then he started calling more often. Once he even came to her house. Vera saw him from the window, standing by the entrance, smoking nervously, looking around. She didn't go out. She called her mother and said, "Don't worry, it's just my ex-husband who showed up." Her mother wanted to call the police, but Vera stopped her. "Not yet, he's just making noise." An hour later, Alexei left, and at that moment, Vera understood definitively. He hadn't come to talk. He had come to check if she would break, if she would be frightened, if she would run and beg for forgiveness. He came because he was accustomed to it. She was quiet, calm, and accommodating, but Vera was no longer accommodating. The first significant news arrived a month later. The lawyer called in the morning. Vera Nikolaevna, I have some information. There has been progress on your case. It appears your ex-husband used your account for money laundering through a chain of companies. They are taking this seriously now, and he's in trouble." "What kind of trouble?" Vera asked, though she already understood. "The kind that led him to attempt a large transfer the day before your visit to the bank." "It appears the intention was to withdraw the remaining funds and finalize the matter. However, your arrival caused the system to trigger a lockdown. These funds are now essentially bait, and the investigation will trace the entire network." Vera remained silent, experiencing a simultaneous sense of relief and a heavy burden. Relief stemmed from her words being validated, but the weight came from the realization that this darkness had once existed within her own life. She had shared her living space, celebrated holidays, and discussed future aspirations with this individual, unaware of the hidden corruption beneath his facade of reliability. "Could I face accusations?" she inquired. "We are diligently working to prevent that outcome," the lawyer assured her. "Your position is strong right now. You came forward voluntarily, you made a statement, and you didn't attempt to flee. These are crucial factors." Vera ended the call and sat in silence for a considerable time. Afterward, she rose, prepared a cup of tea, and for the first time in what felt like ages, noticed her breathing had returned to a steady rhythm. Alexei wasn't apprehended immediately. Initially, there were summons, audits, and formal requests. He continued to move through the city, attempting to project an image of control, but his confidence was dissolving rapidly. Vera learned of his detention by chance through a colleague who was browsing local news. While the news reports did not mention names, they detailed the scheme, the financial figures, and Vera understood instantly. Her colleague remarked, "Vera, can you believe it? They're writing about some bookkeeper who was used. An account was set up in her name, and she had no idea. Horrible." Vera nodded without comment. She had no desire to be a news sensation. Her goal was simply to be someone who had overcome this ordeal. 6 months later, the bank officially closed the account. This was not at Vera's request, but rather due to the completion of the legal proceedings. The remaining funds, which had been under a freeze order, were confiscated pending a court decision. Vera was officially recognized as a victim concerning the misuse of her personal information. As she finalized the paperwork, Ekaterina Sergeyevna commented, "Vera Nikolaevna, I'm so glad you came forward then. Many would have been frightened and not come, and it would have been too late." "Thank you," Vera replied. "If it weren't for you, I probably would have been overwhelmed." "You weren't overwhelmed," Ekaterina responded gently. "You did the most challenging part. You faced the truth." Vera departed the bank and paused on the steps. It was a sunny day, a rarity for late autumn. She tilted her face towards the light and suddenly had a realization. Inside her, there was a quietude, not emptiness, but a profound stillness. And this felt more significant than any sum of money. Vera did not seek retribution. She did not attend any court sessions to confront him. She made no attempt to arrange a meeting. It was enough for her that justice had run its course and she had done her part. One evening, she visited her mother. Her mother set the table, made tea, and brought out some homemade preserves. "So?" her mother asked cautiously. Vera looked at her and smiled. "It's over, Mom. Everything is finished." Her mother sighed and made the sign of the cross. "Thank God." Vera sat by the window, listening to her mother bustling in the kitchen, and mused, "Life is so strangely structured. One small indignity, a discarded card, a drawer in a dresser, and all of this could have escalated into a disaster if she hadn't decided to draw a line at some point." She understood a simple truth. Sometimes drawing a line is not an end, but a form of protection. It's a boundary, a moment when a person declares, "This is no longer acceptable to me." And Vera was grateful that she had expressed this not with anger or a desire for revenge, but with a calm, mature decision. Her life regained its order, the kind she cherished, not sterile and cold, but honest and dependable. She returned to her work, resumed her planning, and her smiles became genuine once more. The card, that particular card, no longer resided in the drawer. Vera discarded it, not in a fit of rage, but calmly, like disposing of an unwanted item. As she closed the lid of the trash bin, she felt a lightness, as the past finally released its grip on her.